Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Lahu ni'matu wa lahul fadlu, wa lahus sana'ul hasan, As-salatu was-salamu ala Sayyidina wa Habibina wa Maulana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. I ask Allah the Exalted to grant us all the sincerest of intentions, the ability to understand and to do good, and the reward in the hereafter. Thereafter, in the last lesson, we were talking about the greatest matters in belief. As per the Sahih Hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, narrated by Imam Muslim, in which it is mentioned that Jibreel, that is the angel Jibreel, came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, "Fa'akhbirni 'anil iman." Tell me, that is, O Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about Iman. What is Iman? And Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he replied back, "An tu'mina billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusuli wal yawmil akhir wa tu'mina bil qadari khayrihi wa sharrihi." That Iman is to believe in Allah, that is the correct belief in Allah, His angels, His revealed books, His prophets, His prophets and messengers, the last day, and to believe in Al-Qadr. That is, everything that happens, good or bad, it happens by Allah having destined for it to occur. Okay, to believe in Al-Qadr. So last week we talked about the basic belief in Allah. We talked about the belief in the angels, and we talked about the belief in the revealed books, and we talked about the belief in the prophets. So this is where I believe we reached. So the next of those things, after having mentioned, that is the belief in Allah, the belief in the angels, the belief in the revealed books, and the belief in the prophets, the fifth thing that is mentioned here is Al-Yawmul Akhir, to believe in the last day. This means to have the correct belief about the last day. In other words, each and every one of us, we have to believe that there will be a day upon which life on this earth will come to an end. No matter how much you love this dunya, no matter how long you live for, at one point in time, you and all of these things on this earth, no matter how attached a person is to them, they will come to an end. We will die, and even this world will come to an end. Then the dead, accountable individuals amongst the humans and the jinn, will be brought back to life again. That is, after they died, they will then be brought back to life and they will live again for judgment. They will be brought back to life to be held to account, and then either rewarded or punished. Some of the scholars, they said this day, it was named as the last day because this is the last day of this earth, and there is no night or day after it. Allah created night and day. This is a creation of Allah. There was a first night and a first day. Like that, since that point, you've had night and day for many thousands of years. There will come a time at which there will be a day after which there isn't a night. There will be a last day for this earth and those who live on it. 100 years before the Day of Judgment, the last Muslim on this earth would die. There are many things that the Prophet ﷺ said would happen before the Day of Judgment. And the scholars, they divided those into major and minor signs before the Day of Judgment. Most of the minor, small signs before the Day of Judgment, they've already passed. Okay, they've already occurred. Among the remaining few is for a person to be born whose name will be the same name as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and whose father's name will be the same as the name of the father of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is, his name will be Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, and he will be given the title Al-Mahdi. So commonly known among the Muslims as Imam Al-Mahdi. That this rightly guided individual, he will appear before the Day of Judgment, spreading justice, goodness, like injustice was widespread before it, and he will be replacing the injustices that will be taking place throughout the world with justice. And thereafter, you have the major signs of the Day of Judgment. Among them is the appearance of a human being known as Ad-Dajjal, who will claim to be God on earth. Okay, he will claim to be Al-Masih, the Messiah, but he will be a liar. And Allah, as a test for the people, will enable this individual to do certain things that are amazing. That prior to that, it was only the prophets who would do those amazing things, those extraordinary matters. However, as you know, the prophets, they all said about themselves, they are the slaves of Allah. They said that they are created and that they worship Allah, and they called others to worship Allah. As for Ad-Dajjal, he himself will claim to be God. And he will claim Godhood for himself. It's not that he will be saying about himself that he is a prophet, look, I'm doing a miracle like the other prophets did miracles. Rather, he will claim to be God on earth. Eventually, and this is like maybe one or a dozen lessons, so this is not really the topic that I want to go too much into, but there are many other things that would occur. Among them is the appearance of a group of humans known as Ya'juj and Ma'juj, and they will be very vast in number. Among those major signs is the descent of Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam from the sky. I'm mentioning these few things in particular because some people, they believe Ad-Dajjal is not a person, and this is not correct. Ad-Dajjal is a person, even though there is a system that is around us now and that will be progressed even in the future, that will be supporting what he is saying and in compliance with what he is trying to, the fitna that is that he would be trying to spread. But Ad-Dajjal is a person and he's already alive. At one point in time, he will emerge. And Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam is also alive right now in the second sky with his body and soul. And he will physically return back to the earth and he will kill Ad-Dajjal. Just as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us. And because we believe in the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, we believe in everything that he informed us about, without doubting in any of it. If you believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it reaches us in a confirmed way, that this is something that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught, then we also have to believe in that thing. Okay, then we also have to believe in that thing. Thereafter, after Ad-Dajjal, that is, after he is killed, the only religion that would be spread throughout the earth is Islam. Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wassalam will live on this earth for a period of time. He will get married, have children, he will die, he will eventually be buried. Some of the scholars said next to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then after some time, kufr would once again appear and it would start to spread and become widespread until eventually at one point in time people would be waiting for the sun to rise and it would not actually rise as they would be expecting it to. And rather than rising from the east, it would rise from the west. On that same day, a beast would appear from the earth and it would go around and put a mark upon the heads of the believers and the non-believers, in a way that it would become clear to everybody who is the mu'min, the Muslim, the believer, and who is the kafir. In a way it will become even clearer such that people would say, "O kafir," and in the way that it's marked upon their heads. Beyond that day, nobody among the kafirs would be guided to repent. Eventually, 100 years before Angel Israfil blows into a special instrument like a horn, 100 years before that, the last of the Muslims, they will die. Allah will send a particular wind, and as that passes through where those Muslims are, they will die. Then only kafirs will be on this earth for 100 years. So the day of judgment, it will come upon the kafirs. In Arabic we say Yawmul Qiyamah. When they say Al-Qiyamah, sometimes what is meant is when the angel blows in the horn for the first time. But if we are more specific about this issue, Al-Qiyamah, which literally means the getting up, it refers to when people will get up and come out of their graves. At one point in time, Angel Israfil, who is one of the greatest and biggest of all angels, In one hadith, it is mentioned that Angel Jibreel, he opened his wings, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw him in his original shape. Often Angel Jibreel would come to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam to visit him, but not in his original shape. At one point in time, he came in his original shape. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said he could not see anything in the horizons, in the skies above him other than Jibreel, from east to west. And he said, "O Jibreel, I never imagined that Allah created a creation like this. So amazing, so magnificent." Angel Jibreel said, "O Prophet of Allah, Allah created me with 600 wings. I just opened 2 of them in front of you. And Allah also created Angel Israfil with 600 wings." And then he mentioned that his wings, that is the wings of Angel Jibreel, are only a small fraction of the wings of Angel Israfil. He's even bigger. So Angel Israfil, he at one point in time, upon the order of Allah, he will blow into a particular instrument, a horn. And when he does that, all those on the earth and in the skies, they will die. The humans, the jinn, and the angels. Even Angel Azrael, the angel of death, even he will die. That sound will be so great, it will cause the hearts of the kafirs to explode. It's a day upon which it is mentioned that the oceans will even be on fire. There are many things that would happen on that day. Again, this is not really the topic for this particular lesson to go into it in detail, but just to give us a particular idea about it. So even the angels will die, eventually even Israfil, this angel, even he will die. Then there would be a period of 40 years after the humans, the jinn, and the angels have died. Allah will then bring Angel Israfil back to life and order him to blow into this horn a second time. When he blows into it a second time, then Allah, the Exalted, He would recreate the decayed bodies of all the human beings. There is a tiny bone at the bottom of the spine which does not decay. From that, Allah will recreate all those who died before that and make their souls re-enter their bodies, and for the people then to come out from their graves. This is Al-Qiyamah, the getting up, the rising up, the coming out from the graves. This is a day that is mentioned in the Quran and the Hadith. And it is mentioned in the Quran. It is a day that lasts for 50,000 years. We believe in it and all of the matters that are associated with it, some of which we'll come on to talk about. That is other than the resurrection, the presentation of the deeds, the mizan, the scale upon which the deeds would be weighed, the sirat, the bridge that crosses over hellfire, and the admission of some people into paradise and some into hellfire everlastingly, as we'll come on to review together. So we believe in the last day. Thereafter, the sixth of these greatest matters that the Prophet ﷺ informed us about is to believe in Al-Qadr. Okay, to believe in Al-Qadr. That is to believe in destiny. That is, everything that occurs, it occurs by Allah having destined, or if you want, you can even say predestined. Okay, these have the same meaning. Predestined or destined, eternally destined to occur by His attribute of Al-Qadr. Right? And you can also say At-Taqdeer. Taqdeer, okay, this is At-Taqdeer. When we say that, or we say Al-Qadr, this means the attribute of Allah, by which Allah specifies limits for certain things, specifies what is good and specifies what is evil. Whatever would occur, all of that, it is by Allah having destined for it to occur. And it occurs in compliance with the knowledge of Allah and His will, His eternal will, and by Allah creating it, bringing it into existence. Al-Qadr, this word, it can also have the meaning of the destined thing, which in Arabic they call the maqdur, what occurs. So Al-Qadr, it can mean the attribute of Allah, and it can also mean what is destined to occur. Okay, that is the creation, the good and the bad. One needs to have the correct belief in this. That is to believe that everything, good and evil, whether it is an entity, a physical thing, okay, whether it is a physical thing or a deed, that is an action. Everything physical, me and you, and that which we do, it is predestined by Allah, i.e. Allah specified a limit and a description for everything. Therefore, as Muslims, we believe that things do not occur by themselves, that the creation does not create another creation. Rather, everything happens in accordance with the eternal knowledge of Allah, His will and destiny. Moreover, everything that comes into existence, it does so by the power of Allah and by Allah creating it. Okay? So all of these 5 matters, everything that occurs, it occurs in accordance with Allah's eternal knowledge, His will, and His destining of it, His taqdeer, okay, His destining of it. And it occurs by His power, which is also an eternal attribute, and by Allah creating it, bringing it into existence after it did not exist. Okay? Is that clear up to there? Thereafter, everything that happens, and so there's another issue to explain here, which is that some people, they heard that if a person makes dua, that this has an effect upon destiny. And this issue requires a certain amount of clarification. So, pay extra attention to understand this issue well, because the Prophet ﷺ, in fact, if you look at that hadith that we mentioned here, narrated by Muslim, look what the Prophet ﷺ said when asked about Iman. He said, "An tu'mina billahi," to believe in Allah, wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi wal yawmil akhir. And then look what he said. He said, "Wa tu'mina." He repeated this word about believing again. He said to believe in Allah, to believe in the angels, the books, the prophets, the day of judgment. He could have then said, and to believe in Al-Qadr. Okay? He could have then said, and to believe in Al-Qadr, the sixth matter. However, he mentioned the word tu'min, again, to believe in, to emphasize that this is a must to believe in it. So having mentioned these 5 greatest matters of belief, he said, وَتُؤْمِنَ بِالْقَدَرِ خَيْرِهِ وَشَرِّهِ, to believe in Al-Qadr. That is the attribute of Allah, and that we don't say about it that it is evil. Okay? To believe in the attribute of Allah, which is Al-Qadr, by which the good and the evil are specified. They are destined to occur. So, just to say a bit more about this issue, or perhaps, I'll tell you what, let's take a break there. I want people to be concentrating more. Okay, let's take a break. Being steadfast and regular with these classes is something really important. Many times we've started a new text and a lot of new people come, the numbers go up, and then you'll find after week number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that, as the weeks progress, the numbers start to drop. There are some people who will come every single week for 5, 6, or 7 weeks. And then something will come up and they decide not to attend the class. Then from that point onwards, if you look at their attendance, it's hit and miss. They come 1 week, they miss 1. Come 2, miss 1. Come 1, miss 3. And it's like that. Many of them, over the years, if I've spoken to one of them, and I said, brother, I'm not seeing you around for the last few weeks, and they put their head down, subhanAllah, yeah, I know I need to come, and so there's no real excuse. I know that if one of us had a flight to catch, and even if you had a bit of a headache, or you had something else come up, you would put those things aside. If need be, you would take 2 paracetamols or whatever, and you would make sure you're on that flight. What's at stake here is much more than that. It's either getting to paradise, which is above the skies, which no plane is going to take you to, or it could be ending up in hellfire. The religious knowledge is the way by which a person is guided to paradise and away from hellfire. So let each of us put the due effort in this regard. So in the previous session, we were talking about destiny. to believe that everything that is good and everything that is bad, that is evil, it happens by Allah having destined for it to occur. Whether it be a physical thing or a deed, an action. To explain this issue a bit further though, let it be known that everything that happened from the start of creation until the last person to enter paradise enters paradise, and the last person to enter hellfire enters hellfire. All of this, including what I am saying and what you are doing right now, is written down in a special creation called Al-Lawhul Mahfuz, the preserved tablet, a physical structure that is a 500-year walking distance across. A very large creation. 500-year walking distance means it is bigger than this earth. A huge creation that Allah, the Exalted, created. And Allah created another creation known as Al-Qalam, which literally means the pen. And Allah ordered it to write down what was, as is mentioned in the narration of At-Tirmidhi in his Sunan, what was, i.e. from the first of creation, and what will be. That is, until the day of judgment, including about who is going to go to paradise and who is going to go to hellfire. Thereafter, to expand upon that, things are written down, some things that is, are written down in this guarded tablet in a different way. Yani there are some things that are written in a way where it says X will happen and Y will happen. In general, things are written in two ways within the preserved tablet. You have them written down as this thing will happen if also such and such thing, certain literally, if you like, conditional destiny, or as definitively settled regardless of other preceding matters. And this is known as Al-Qadr Al-Mubram. Basically, destiny, when we go into it in more detail, and here, remember, we are not talking now about the attribute of Allah. The attribute of Allah is absolute, without beginning, without end, without change. Nothing can change Allah, or that is the Dhat of Allah, or His Sifat. Nothing. Dua does not change Allah or His attributes. Giving in charity does not and cannot change Allah or His attributes. The knowledge of Allah does not change. Allah knows what is going to happen and what is not going to happen. But if it were to happen, how it would happen. Okay, Allah knows what will happen and what will not happen. But if it were to happen, how it would happen. Allah's knowledge is absolute. and it is one, without parts. So it doesn't have a beginning, it doesn't have, if you like, a proportion, a fraction, or an end, and without partners. And Allah's knowledge does not change. The same is said about all of Allah's attributes. Allah's attributes are all without a beginning, without an end, without parts, and without Allah having a partner in any of His attributes. That is, in His attribute of knowledge, will, destiny, power, creating, and His other attributes. Okay? Allah does not have a partner. And all of the attributes, as I said, are without a beginning and without an end. This is a fundamental, and you have that firmly within the heart, without any doubt. The one who doubts about that, then he negates the first thing that the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Imanu Billah. Al-Iman, the correct belief in Allah. I've told you before, there are some people, a group known as the Druze. They exist in Palestine, in Lebanon, and in some other surrounding countries. I believe also in Syria, perhaps elsewhere. Anyway, in that region, this group of people, when they say La ilaha illallah, by the word Allah, they refer to a man whose name was Hakim bi Amrillah. He lived in the past. Okay, so saying La ilaha illallah and saying you believe in Allah, but then by the word Allah referring to a man or referring to something you imagine in your mind, or something that lives inside the Kaaba, or something that lives in the skies. This is not the correct belief about Allah. Allah does not resemble me and you in any way whatsoever. Allah exists without time and space. Allah is not in one place and is not in every place. He created all of the places and exists without them, free of need. Subhana. So, as I was saying, the attributes of Allah do not change. So when we say Allah's taqdeer, that is His attribute, this does not change. And it cannot change. Nothing can change it. Change is a sign of being created. Change means for something new to occur. Something that wasn't there and then it occurred. That's change. Change is generally either you became better or you became worse. If you say that Allah became better, then what does that mean? He had some deficiency before. And that's kufr. If you say Allah improved, if you say Allah became better, what does that mean? It's as though you said before that He had some defect, He had some deficiency. And that's kufr. Allah does not change. He does not improve and become better. And of course, if you say He became worse, then that misguidance is even more apparent. Allah is free of that. Allah is free of change. And as I said, change, it means something. If it stays the same, you don't say change. Change means something new occurring. Something new means created, makhluk, hadith, okay, muhdath. Something new that occurs, this is to do with the creation and not the creator. Is that clear? So dua does not change the will of Allah. It does not change Allah's attribute of destiny. It does not change Allah's knowledge. Okay? Anybody who believes otherwise, they are not a Muslim. Because they would be saying Allah is like the creation, like me and you. Is that clear for everybody? So dua does not change the will of Allah or His attribute of taqdeer or al-qadr. Thereafter, to go back to what we were saying here, what does it mean when some scholars said that relying upon a particular hadith, that dua can have an effect upon al-qadr? Here, the scholars, they explain that al-qadr is of two types. Okay? Al-qadr is of how many types? Two. One is called al-mu'allaq, conditional, and one is called al-mubram. Okay, al-mubram and al-mu'allaq. Okay, so one is called what? Al-mu'allaq, conditional. Okay, depends upon something having occurred before it. And the second type is called what? Al-mubram. Even if you don't remember the terms, remember that there is one type that is with regards to something having happened before it. It depends on what's gone before it. And the other type is not like that. Both of these two are to do with what? To do with what's written in the preserved tablet. Clear? And not to do with the attribute of Allah. Okay? So don't mix up. To go with this issue even further, Imam Muslim narrates in his Sahih and others that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he asked Allah for four things. Allah granted three of them and not the fourth. And then it was revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Muhammad, inni idha qadaytu amran fa innahu la yurad. O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if Allah has willed a particular matter, destined for a particular matter to occur, then nothing can stop that. Nothing can change that. Nothing can prevent that. That thing will occur. The scholars, they mention about dua, that dua, again, as is mentioned in the hadith, this is a great act of worship. If you ask Allah, you get reward for it. Allah would grant you what you ask for, plus reward you because you asked Allah. How great is that? This is among the reasons why Lady Aisha radiyallahu anha, the mother of the believers, it is famous about her, she used to make a lot of dua, even for small things. For little things, she'd be making dua to Allah, because that's rewardable. And that's something good, something encouraged to be done. And of course, what's apparent, she took that from her husband, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Prophet alaihi salatu wasallam, he taught us that dua is a great act of worship. Moreover, he informed us that the dua of a pious person is more likely to be accepted. However, the dua of even a kafir might be accepted. Their worship, ibadah, is not valid. But if they ask Allah, He might answer them. That's what it means. So for us, dua is an act of worship, it is rewardable. But a kafir might ask Allah for something and it could be granted to him. Like for example, At-Tirmidhi narrated in his Sunan that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned about not being unjust to other people, even the kafir. For if you are unjust to a kafir, he might make dua to Allah against you and Allah might answer him. That's what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught. Likewise, in that Sahih hadith narrated by Ibn Hibban, when that person came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said certain things to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and then the Prophet taught him a certain dua to make. whilst he was still a kafir. Then he came back, he said, I've embraced Islam. Now teach me more. But prior to that, the Prophet ﷺ taught him like to say, Oh Allah, protect me from the evil of myself. That's among the things that the Prophet taught him. And after he embraced Islam, the Prophet told him that dua again and added to it. Like, Oh Allah, protect me from the evil of myself, and Oh Allah, forgive me. Because when he was upon kufr, there isn't a forgiveness for him, except that he would be having to embrace Islam for him to seek that forgiveness. Okay, so dua, as I was saying, it's a great act of worship. Some du'as are permissible and some are impermissible. Not every dua is permissible. If you make a dua to Allah, to say, Oh Allah, prove the Quran wrong. Oh Allah, prove your Prophet wrong. Like to say, Oh Allah, make me a prophet. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is the last of the prophets, isn't it? We have to believe in that. The one who says, Oh Allah, grant that to me, it's like as though he's saying, Oh Allah, even though in the Quran you told me that the last prophet is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, but oh Allah, prove your Quran wrong. This is kufr. So one needs to be mindful of this issue. This again, a detailed topic. When we go through usually the gathering on Nisfu Sha'ban, we'll go through it again in more detail there. Okay, so some things are written in a conditional way. If you make dua, then such and such thing will happen. If you don't make it, then something else would happen. You would die at a particular time from a particular accident. Okay, it might be that if you make, it says, if the person makes dua, then this person will be saved from such and such, dying from such and such accident. And if they don't make it, then that accident would occur and they would die from it. For example, or they would get such and such illness or face some other type of calamity. This is what is meant by what some of the scholars mentioned in reference to certain other sayings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that a person's dua and sadaqah and certain other good deeds, like keeping good ties with your blood relatives, they can have an effect upon what would occur. Okay, they can have an effect upon what would occur. And this is what we are referring to here as al-qadr al-mu'allaq, conditional, and al-qadr al-mubram. Now, on a night known as Laylatul Qadr, on this particular night, Allah makes specific things, certain things known to a group of angels about births and deaths and certain other related matters. Those angels, for some things though, they get to write down from the preserved tablet things in a conditional way. If this person does X thing, then such and such thing will happen. And if they don't, then something else will happen. They don't get told which of the two will occur. So they write them both down. Then at the time that Allah eternally will, when that person, let's say, makes dua or not, and subsequently what Allah has eternally willed to occur occurs, those angels delete one of the two matters. Okay, this was mentioned by Ibn Abbas amongst others. radiyallahu anhuma. That is, they change what they wrote down in their books. Not that what is in the preserved tablet that changes, because that does not change either. We said Allah's attribute does not change. Okay? But even the preserved tablet, which is a creation, change could have applied to it, but Allah eternally willed that even in that, what is written, it does not change. Okay? Literally, if you like, the ink has dried. What's written is written. There isn't a change that occurs in the preserved tablet. Okay? Any questions up to there about what's been said up to here, up until this point? I know we've gone through that in quite a bit of detail. My strong advice and encouragement is to review this lesson more than once. Okay? I do not know of a person who revised for an exam and they only read whatever it was, the course material once, and then hoped to pass. Okay? What's at stake here is a lot. If you have the wrong belief, the result of that could be disastrous. And nowadays, there are people who talk about these topics carelessly. And they'll say things like, the will of Allah changes. Allah does not change. Change is a sign of being created. As I said, change means something new occurring. Allah is free of that. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any questions up to there then? Let's go through this narration then, for a benefit before we conclude. Not believing in Qadar is kufr. Ibn Hibban narrated in his Sahih, and others, Ahmad in his Musnad among others, from the root of Ibn Adaylami, one of the followers of the companions, that he said, I came to Ubay ibn Ka'b, one of the great companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about whom the Prophet said, he is the most knowledgeable in the recitation of the Quran. Ubay ibn Ka'b radiyallahu anhu. He came to him and he said, "Oh Abu al-Munzir, something has occurred to me in my mind with reference to the issue of Qadar. So talk to me about it. Perhaps Allah will benefit me. That is by your speech." Ubay, he said, "Inna Allah لو عذب أهل سماواته وأهل أرضه لعذبهم وهو غير ظالم لهم." He said, indeed, Allah, had He tortured the people of His skies and His earth, had Allah tortured the people of the skies, being unjust, it cannot apply to Allah. Had Allah, in other words, created the humans, the jinn, and the angels, all of us in hellfire, this would not be injustice. We are His creation. He does whatever He eternally willed with us. Of course, we believe that angels are not going to be punished in hellfire. Prophets are not going to be punished in hellfire. Anybody who believes otherwise, they are belying the Quran, and this is kufr. That's not what we're talking about here. We said, had it been that Allah created, just like is mentioned here, had Allah punished those in the skies or on the earth, that is the humans, the jinn and the angels. This would not be injustice from Allah. He does whatever He eternally willed. Then He continued, He said, وَلَوْ رَحِمَهُمْ كَانَتْ رَحْمَتُهُ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ مِنْ أَعْمَالِهِمْ. He then said, and had Allah been merciful to them, that is, instead of punishing them, then His mercy would be better for them than their good deeds. We do not get reward because it's an obligation upon Allah to reward us in the hereafter. No. Allah will reward us for the good deeds by His mercy. And because He promised that He would do that, not because it's an obligation upon Allah. There is nothing that is obligatory upon Allah. So He said, had Allah been merciful to them, then His mercy would be better for them than their good deeds. I.e., the good deeds do not obligate Allah to reward their doers, but rather Allah rewards by His mercy. He then said, وَلَوْ أَنفَقْتَ مِثْلَ أُحُدٍ ذَهَبًا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ مَا قَبِلَهُ اللَّهُ مِنْكَ حَتَّى تُؤْمِنَ بِالْقَدَرِ. He then said, and had you given in charity the likes of Mount Uhud in gold. Mount Uhud is a mountain just on the outskirts of the city of Al-Madinah in Al-Hijaz. He said, if you gave in charity, like one of us, all of us, if we got together, worked day and night, we would not own gold the equivalent of Mount Uhud. Imagine we owned the size of this hall in gold. Somebody could do a calculation in that. I estimate you'd by far be the richest man on earth, by far. Anyway, he said if you gave in charity, like the Mount Uhud in gold, for the sake of Allah, Allah would not accept it from you until you believe in the qadr. Until you believe in destiny. That is what Allah has destined to occur. And then He explained it. He said, وَتَعْلَمَ أَنَّ مَا أَصَابَكَ لَمْ يَكُنْ لِيُخْطِئَكَ وَمَا أَخْطَأَكَ لَمْ يَكُنْ لِيُصِيبَكَ وَلَوْ مِتَّ عَلَى غَيْرِ هَذَا لَدَخَلْتَ النَّارِ. He then said, and know that whatever hit you would not have missed you. And whatever missed you was not going to hit you. And if you die on other than this, you will enter hellfire. You don't have this correct belief, regardless of your other good deeds, regardless of how much charity you give. Even if you give that charity for the sake of Allah, you believe in Allah, but you don't believe in Al-Qadr. You don't believe in destiny. You don't believe that what was willed to occur to you, what was due to hit you, it was never going to miss you. And what missed you was never going to hit you. If the entire creation got together to benefit you, and if Allah has not willed for that benefit to reach you, it will never reach you. And if the entire creation got together to harm you, and if Allah has not willed and destined for that harm to come to you, then it will never come to you. That's what He said. If you do not believe in that, regardless of your other good deeds, even if you give in gold the equivalent of Mount Uhud in charity, Allah would not accept that from you. And if you die without this correct belief, regardless of your other deeds, you are going to hellfire. That's what this companion said to him. Very clear terms. Ibn al-Daylami then said, then I went to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. He really picked out giants here amongst the Sahaba. These are like mountains of knowledge. Mountains of knowledge. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu. Each of these are great, great scholars and among the greatest of the awliya. He went to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu. He's asked him the same question. Ibn al-Daylami said, he replied back exactly like Ubay ibn Ka'b. The same thing. You need to believe in Al-Qadr. It is a must. If you do not believe in it, even if you give a mountain of gold in charity, Allah will not accept it from you. All the same thing. If Allah punished those on the earth and in the sky, this would not be an injustice. Allah would not be considered or attributed with injustice, and so on. All the same things. Then he said, I went to Hudhayfa ibn al-Yaman. Again, huge, huge, great, great companion. These are among the best of the best. He asked him the same thing. He got the same reply. Indeed, Allah, had He tortured the people of the skies and those of the earth, the residents, rather than people here would be better translation. The inhabitants or the residents of the skies and His earth, He would have tortured them without Him being unjust to them. And had He been merciful to them, then His mercy would have been better than their good deeds. And if they gave a mountain of gold in charity, Allah would not accept it from them if they did not have the correct belief in Al-Qadr. That is, what was due to hit you was never going to miss you. And whatever missed you was never going to hit you. And you need to die upon this correct belief. He then said, I went to Zayd ibn Thabit. Again, great, great companion. Abu Bakr and Umar radiyallahu anhuma, when they decided for the Quran to be written down, who did they go to? Zayd ibn Thabit. He is considered as one of the 6 most knowledgeable of all of the companions. He went and asked him. He said the same thing, but added to it. And I heard this from the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Yani the others, they taught that person the correct belief. The second one, he taught him the correct belief. The same statements. He went to Zayd. Zayd taught him the same correct belief. And he said, this is what the Messenger of Allah taught me. That's how the other companions, they were all saying the same correct basic belief in very clear terms. So one cannot doubt about these issues. And Allah, the Exalted, knows best. Let's stop here for today and we'll continue next week. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. Oh Allah, forgive us, guide us and protect us. Oh Allah, grant us a correct knowledge and understanding of the rules of the religion. Oh Allah, give us similar reward to our attendance in this gathering, to all of our teachers, back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. O Allah, make us among those who support the religion day and night. O Allah, end our lives successfully. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.